Today, me and Daniel are going to talk about the short story written by Edgar Allan Poe, The Telltale Heart. I am reporter Chang from H2C3.
I'm reporter Daniel from H2 Support.
We're going to start by introducing the author. The author is a famous short story writer called Edgar Allan Poe. He was born in the first in the 19th of January 1809, and he died at the 7th of October 1849. He came from America, and he usually writes about romantic and horror and detective um, novels, usually short story. He has a lot of achievement include pioneer detective novels, The Theory of Art for Art's Sake. His representative works include The Raven and The Fall of House of Usher. We're going to split into four parts to introduce this story. First is brief story summary. Second is analysis of key themes. Third is personal interpretation, and the fourth is discussion of framework. I'm going to talk through the first and the second one. First, brief story summary. In The Telltale Heart, an unnamed narrator insists that he's not insane as he explains how he murdered an old man he lived with. Although he claims to love the old man, he becomes obsessed with the man's pale vulture eye. For a week, he spies on the old man at night, and on the final night, he kills him and hides the body under the floorboards. When the police arrive, the narrator at first feels very confident, but he begins to hear a steady beating sound that drive him into panic. Believing that it's the old man's heart, he breaks down and confesses. But actually, in the story, the old man is already dead and the body is under the ground. So the beating sound should not be the heartbeat, and it is imagined by the narrator. Second, I'm going to analysis of key themes. In my opinion, there is one and one only theme in this story, which is madness and insanity. There are many evidence that prove that the narrator is um, insane. For example, at the beginning of the story, he claims that he is insane. He is sane, and he keeps on saying that he did a very great job killing the old man. And another evidence is that he claims to kill the old man because he couldn't bear the old man's vulture eye, which is not a normal reason why someone will kill people in our daily life if we're not mad. And also, after he killed the police, he killed the old man. Police has come into the house because neighbor has reported him. Um, he felt really confident at first, but at last he had a real mental breakdown, and but then the police didn't do anything and sit on still sitting on the seat and smiling, looking at him, which shows that the police are definitely not real, and that's also imagined by the narrator, which let us questions the reality of the whole story. Daniel is going to talk through the last two parts.
Okay, and the third part is personal interpretation. And I divided this part into four smaller parts, which is unreliable narrators, writing techniques, emotional resonance, and personal interpretation. And first, for the unreliable narrator, he opens by insisting. Next week, opens by insisting he's not mad and boasting about his wife's murder planning. But his narrative is full of delusions. For example, like he claims to hear sounds from heaven and hell, and murders over the old man's evil eye with no real grudge, and finally kills him. And the next part is for the key writing techniques. I think there are mainly three techniques in this story, and which is repetition, irony, and symbolism. And first, with the repetition, in the story, there are sentences like louder, louder for the heartbeat, which mirrors his spiraling madness. And irony lies in his sanity claims versus violent, delusional actions, and his perfect crime, collapsing uh, due to the guilt. And the third one is symbolism. And the core symbols like the evil eyes and represent his paranoia, while the heart beating embodies inescapable guilt, both tied to a thing. And the third one is emotional resonance. The story endures because it taps into universal emotions, such as guilt, fear, awe, and losing control, and anxiety about madness. The narrator's extreme guilt is an amplified version of the restlessness we've all felt after small mistakes, and making the horror personal and timeless. And finally, for personal interpretation, to me, this isn't just a horror story, but is uh, a warning against denying inner darkness, and the narrator's refusal to acknowledge his guilt and paranoia destroys him. And it also makes us question truth's subjectivity, as his unreliability leaves reality ambiguous. Suppressing negative emotions never make them disappear. They will always resurface like the heartbeat under the floorboards. And the final part of the story is the discussion of the framework. And I also separated it into six parts. Uh, exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution, and finally the perspective. And first, for the exposition, the narrator opens by defending his sanity against uh, accusations, introducing his obsession with the old man's evil eye, and he admits no grudge against the old man, but setting up the core tension, sanity versus madness, and whether his obsession with will turn violent. And next, the rise of action. The tension builds as the narrator sneaks into the old man's room nightly for 7 days, and waiting to kill, but acting only when the evil eye is open. And his planning reveals growing paranoia and a desperate claim to rationality. And the big part of the story is climax. On the eighth night, the narrator wakes the old man and panics at the sound of the old man's raising heartbeat, and finally kills him. He dismembers the body and hides it under the floorboards, and his sanity faces shattering. And then for the following action, uh, police arrive after a neighbor's report. The narrator acts calm, but even seeing the officers above the body. But guilt triggers him of a heartbeat, and his anxiety is as the destroying him as the sound grows louder. And finally, for the resolution, overwhelmed by the heartbeat, the narrator confesses and screaming to tear up the floorboards. His attempt to escape guilt, which tell us the key thing, which is guilt is inescapable. And now, for the narrative perspective, there are two perspective, which is the first person perspective and unreliable perspective. The first person perspective pulls us into the narrator's twisted mind. For example, like he often uses like I or something to make the horror person, and we also experience his passion, panic, and guilt directly, not just as outside observers. And the second one is the unreliable perspective. And the narrator is unreliable because his claims of sanity contradict his actions, like killing over an eye and uh, with nothing. And this forces us to question reality and turning passive reading into active interpretation. And that's all for the telltale part. And thank you for watching.
Thanks for watching. That's the end. Bye bye.